Hello, everyone, and welcome to When We're Black Women. We are loading in, and it is so good to see so many of you coming together. We appreciate you. We are glad that you are here. We are looking forward to an amazing meeting. As always, I appreciate those of you that have your hands up, but we will not be able to take questions at this time. If you have a question or you want to make sure that it's something that we are addressing, please feel free to use that Q&A. Our sister Jewel Love is going to help us make sure that we have that we're able to address all the things that we can, but we are not going to be able to address hands at this point. So go ahead and use the Q&A. It is that box right there in the bottom of your tray if you're using your computer. That would be so helpful. We are getting ready to get into our Win with Black Women space. And again, I'm apologizing in advance that we won't be taking hands today, but we will look at your questions. So if you want to go ahead and drop your concern or your comment in the Q&A, or guess what else? You can use the chat. The chat is now open. So if you'd like to use the chat to say hello, we'd love to know where you are coming in from. Let us know where you are dialing in from. Where are you attending us from? That would be so helpful. Okay, I see you from all over. And already the chat is officially open and things are happening. We are so glad you are here. I'm going to get started in just a moment. I just want to make sure we get our countdown in. We are already more than 2,000 strong, and we will continue to grow, I know. And let's go ahead and get this started. So first and foremost, my sisters, it must be Sunday night because we are here with Win with Black Women. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or maybe the millionth time, and everybody in between, I want you to know that you have entered a space that is specifically designed for ourselves. As our sister Joteka always says, When with Black Women is a love letter to ourselves. And that's exactly the space that you have entered. And I am so glad that all of you are here. As a reminder, I want to remind you that When We're Black Women is a space where we focus exclusively on Black women. And so what you will hear from us today will be, guess what? About Black women. We are a collective of intergenerational, intersectional Black women leaders throughout the nation. And why is that important? Because I don't know about you, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I actually don't know a Black woman who doesn't lead. Like every Black woman I know is leading something. Some of them are leading us as a nation, and others of them are leading in their households, and many of them are doing both. And so I know when I come here, I know that I am with the people who are amongst the leaders. And I want to thank all of you all for joining us. Who are we? Well, we are business leaders, political strategists, student leaders, faith leaders, tech leaders, labor leaders, pioneers in sports, music, and entertainment, movement leaders, and beyond. And we come together in our personal capacities to stand united in support of Black women. We are motivated by the concern, I would say this is important, the collective concern of Black women and the treatment of Black women within our current political cycle. And boy, those words were never more true than they are this week. We believe that no matter what your political affiliation is, that you too should be outraged by what is happening to Black people and Black women. And so know that you have entered a space where we will be talking about it. We will be strategizing, but most importantly, we will be caring for ourselves and each other. This group has been successfully meeting since August of 2020, and it is January 2025. And sisters, we still here. And not only are we here and we are stronger than ever. Over the course of the last 4 years, we started with 90. Ultimately, we grew to a little more than 4,500. The 4,500 became 44,000. The 44,000 enveloped into 90,000. The 90,000 became not just what we do here on Sunday nights, but in also took to the states. We started to go deep, and we had two state affiliates, and the two state affiliates became almost 30 state affiliates, and we are still growing. And do you know, today, not because of the election, but since the election, our network is now almost to 200,000 Black women leaders signed up, ready to be a part of what we do here, and that is supporting our three primary goals. And what are they? First and foremost, we deal with the elimination of racist and sexist attacks on Black women. Second, we work within our personal capacities, write that part down, personal capacities, to support the historic number of Black women running for elected office, and that is at every level. And then finally, and probably just as importantly as the first two, we are very committed to the agenda, the image, and the collective, positive collective power of Black women. Now, I don't know about you, but this week has been a whole space. And so we should not do anything until we get plugged into that which gives us courage, which gives us grace, which helps give us our energy, our divine power. And for that, I am happy to have our sister Barbara Perkins here on the line with us to make sure that we start this space and that we open this space in the right way. Sister Barbara, I turn to you.
Thank you, Holly. And good evening, sisters. Holly, as I'm listening to you with the history of this network and all that we have done together, I first want to open the meeting by saying thank you. Thank you first to God for the sustainability that we have had over these years, coming together Sunday night after Sunday night and everything in between, all the preparation for the calls. I thank God for the stamina, the courage, the commitment collectively that we've brought together. And if I could offer this prayer this evening, I would start with saying, we come first off with a grateful heart, united in our purpose and devoted to the common good of Black women and all those we serve. We thank you, God, for the gift of this network, for the strength you give us to keep pushing forward, even on those days that are tough and those weeks that look like the toughest times of our lives. We thank you because we know that in the struggles, we are not alone. You are with us, guiding us, and lifting us when we falter. We thank you because you've extended extraordinary grace towards us when we, those of us who call ourselves believers, when we even have doubt about the times and the seasons we are in, you call us back to remember who you are and who we are. So we thank you, dear God. We thank you for being the Lord, the ruler, the master, the guide, for giving us the strength and the knowledge to be the map makers for the future of not just Black people, but people. Once again, dear God, it feels like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. And thank you for the peace in our hearts. Thank you for removing all of the stress, God. This is really our prayer, but it's also our ask of you. There are times when we are feeling the weight in such a way that we feel like, are we really moving forward? And God, so we center ourselves around this season that we're in. We center ourselves knowing that we can't do both. We can't worry and be fearful and trust you at the same time. So we are choosing trust. We are choosing trust. We know that this is not the end of the story. We know what the last chapter says, and it says we win. But in between, in this human experience that we're having, God, there are gaps where doubt and sometimes fear slips in. We asking you to help us with that. Bring us together. Bless us all who have gathered tonight on this call, and any woman who's ever been on these calls, whether it's once, twice, or every call. We ask for a special blessing on her life tonight. May we feel your presence and the peace that you bring and the understanding that your love brings to us and your favor. We ask for a special blessing tonight on Joteka and her family, all the families who are grieving for something, whether it's the loss of a loved one or loss of property. We especially think about those who are in the Los Angeles County area, God, for what they are going through. Stories after stories after stories. Today has been a pretty difficult day for me as we had a hearing with, for 25 families who've lost everything, it seems. But God, you know, and you have given us the brilliance to sit with this and figure out how to be the bridge that our people need at this time. Our brilliance is our superpower. And dear God, we thank you for the gift of that. We ask now that you continue to guide us in this collective work, inspire us to serve one another, be our sisters, not just our sister's keeper, but be our sisters. Help us to love one another and be particularly kind and gentle with ourselves and each other. Let the spirit of unity and justice and love reign in all that we do. God, we thank you now for what is about to happen on this call. Only you know what direction it's going to take. We know that our intention is to continue doing good, to continue doing the work that we've come to do collectively. And individually, Lord, we ask for the courage and the will and the power and the strength to do this work. This is our prayer. And collectively we say, Amen.
Ooh, amen. Thank you so much, Sister Barbara. You know, sometimes when we are feeling frantic and hurried and moving all around in all the places, we just need a calming word. We just need a soothing voice. And I appreciate you for bringing all of that to us today. This has been a rough one, I think, for many of us this week for all kinds of reasons. And it is good to be centered uh, in the word. Thank you. All right. Okay. Well, ladies, we are just getting started. We are just getting started, and we want to start where we focused on from last week, and that is giving you a bit of an update on where we are in terms of the LA fires and what is going on in Los Angeles. Please know here, and we will share this in the resource tab, that we are still collecting resources to the Win with Black Women LA Fires Fund. As a reminder, this is a partnership. We put this fund together in partnership with GoFundMe. The GoFundMe allows us to collect dollars and provide you with a tax deduction. It also allows us to have one of our own help to work to make sure that the funds are administered in the ways that we have shared with you they would be administered. We do not touch any funds, as you all know. That's part of our policy and our commitment to being transparent and clear. But what we do is we want to make sure that the funds go exactly as they should go. And so our sister Jackie DuPont Walker has agreed to kind of help us make sure that those funds are doing exactly that and helping families that we know need help. And so, Sister Jackie, please come and share with us where we are as it relates to our our work and our efforts in California. Give us an update and let us know what else we might need to be thinking about or doing.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you, my sisters. This evening, we have a lot to rejoice about. It's our watch, and your faithfulness and resilience is evident in the way you are responding. As our sister Barbara Perkins said so well, thank you can never be overstated. Let me start by thanking God for liquid sunshine. It's raining and the winds are ceasing. Our song today is Let It Rain and Let the Hills Stay in Place. And we are still praying for anyone not yet found to be safe here. And if for any reason they cannot be found safe here, we rejoice that they will be in eternity. Here is our update. The two collaborative agencies, the Flint Ridge Center and Neighborhood Servant Services, are definitely indigenous networks that have boots on the ground and authentic connections. What a wonderful combination we have to manage the fund, the Win with Black Women's Fund. Yes, the international communities are watching and helping, and we're in dialogue and networking so that they're letting us know what is coming together. Sisters, you are the difference needed. Win with Black Women is poised to step in as the media abandons Eaton Valley and as reality sinks in for what is now at least 109 families in the Eaton Valley area who have not a home to go to anymore. These are self-reliant families, sisters and brothers, who some have fourth and fifth generation wealth legacy at stake, who now find themselves without a place to call home. The details for connecting directly with the fund will be forthcoming very soon, and we are confident it will be timely for those whose needs are our business. Sisters, you make the difference. As Joteka and Holly have said, remember, this is not a sprint, but a marathon of rebuilding, protecting legacy, and shaping a more excellent future. A barcode will be provided in the chat section. Please keep the fund growing. Tell anyone who is concerned about funds getting to the Black community that this is the place that they can trust. It is well as we stay faithful and available. My sisters, thank you for being God's light in the world, and for all of us here in Eaton Valley that I want to rename Altadena Rebuild. What you do will make the difference for our forebears and for future generations. Keep the funds going, and we will be faithful to the charge that has been given through Win with Black Women.
You would think after 5 years we'd have that mute button figured out, but it's not quite to be. Thank you so much for that. And it is great to hear that you are helping us on the ground ensure that our funds are going to Black families and that it is being administered exactly the way that we would hope that it would be administered. And so I want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
I know sisters are saying that they have other folks in the area. Is there a way for them to make other kinds of donations or other acts of service to the area?
Yes, can the barcode also be used for that information to be given? And I will make sure that I get back to them and connect.
Okay. And sisters, for those of you all looking for the link, the Support Wildfire link is in your resource tray under Support Wildfire. It is live right now. So go ahead and go to your resource button and you can click on the wildfire relief and it will take you right to that. And so I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to look at that. I'm trying to make sure that I am not missing any other questions. And I will also say that we have circulated and we can re-up the list of verified families that have individual GoFundMe accounts. And so I see that as well. So we'll make sure that you are getting that as well to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. All righty. Well, I appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for standing in the gap and making sure that we are looking out for our families there and our sisters. We could not do this without you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Okay, well, it is always good to have a little bit of good news in the midst of a bunch of foolishness that we know is going on in our world. And listen, you would not even think that you would be at Win with Black Women if we did not deal with the thing that is top of so many of you all's minds. I don't think there's been a single week where we've gotten as many tags, if we've gotten as many people DMing us and asking about what are we going to do about what is happening from this administration and their position around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so before we get into the what we do, we need to make sure that we are fully educated and informed with accurate and truthful information about what is real and what is not. And so what we wanted to be very intentional about today is bringing on some of the folks who've been at the forefront of this long before we were looking at these administrative orders, executive orders, long before Trump was elected. We had sisters on the ground working entrenched to defeat this. Because I want to remind you all, this didn't just happen. This was something that was definitely a part of, and we talked about it a lot over the last several years here on this call, that this was a part of the plan from Project 2025. Now, I guess Trump 2025. And so we knew that some of this was coming. But even within that, we see that there are some things that we could not have anticipated. And so I know we may have one other person who may be joining us, but we are so privileged and honored to have two sister warriors on this issue. Janae Nelson from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and Maya Wiley for the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Holly. It's wonderful to be with you and wonderful to be with all of you and with my powerful sister leader, Janae Nelson.
Absolutely.
Got you, Maya. It's wonderful to see you, and it's such an honor to be here. And Holly, thanks for that introduction. We've got some serious talk to get into.
We do, and we have given ourselves a pretty big bandwidth so that we can not only get into it, but hopefully answer some questions. And so before we get into let's start exactly with what everyone wants to know. What are these executive orders? What did they do? And if you could just give us, I'm going to come to Janae first. I know you are both attorneys, but Janae is the person who I know will likely be bringing some lawsuits. If you could just set the record straight for all of us so we are well informed about what has happened to date and what is real.
Thanks, Holly. If I can for a moment, I just want to make sure that folks understand the organization that I'm representing. I am the president and director counsel of the Legal Defense Fund. We were founded in 1940, became a wholly separate organization from the NAACP in 1957. And we're the folks who've been litigating cases for the past 85 years. starting with voting rights cases, ending white primaries, all the way to Brown versus Board of Education, all the way to the recent Supreme Court win to create 2 new Black congressional districts in the states of Louisiana and Alabama. So this is what we do. We sued Trump before in the first Trump administration. We had actually never sued a president, and we sued him multiple times. And, were able to stop some of his worst aggressions, and we're prepared to do that again. What I will say, though, is we need to understand the full breadth and impact of these executive orders. He issued over 30 executive orders in less than a week. So it's been a deluge. It's been a full-on assault. The good thing is we knew some of what was coming because we've seen some of it before. It's a little bit different in some of the shape that it's taken. But we also knew from Project 2025 what they were already forecasting and what we're already seeing manifest in some of these executive orders. The primary ones that I think we need to be most concerned about is a reboot of an earlier executive order that basically banned what they were calling divisive concepts, anything that made people feel shame or guilt or, some type of way when you talked about the realities of discrimination and historical marginalization of people, especially Black people. We now have a new order that doesn't speak in those terms because that was clearly a violation of the First Amendment. And at the end of Trump's first term, that executive order had already been enjoined. A court had already said that executive order was unlawful and stopped its implementation. So this time they did something a little bit different. And I want to make sure that I point that out because that actually shows that they knew not to do it again that way because they lost. So the fight actually matters. It may feel like, we're losing forward or, some of these things keep coming back, but we are forcing them to rethink how they do it and try to wiggle through the legal morass to get the nefarious goals achieved. So in this iteration, what they've done is they've seized on DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. They've made this a boogeyman. They've turned these very laudable concepts that so many of us understand to be essential to the progress and advancement of our multiracial democracy, essential to a country that is going to be a majority people of color in, by 2040. There's no way to sustain this country and this democracy without taking into account diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. But instead, they've issued this order, and it effectively bans any programs that name any one of those concepts, that are premised on any one of those concepts, or could conceivably, even without the name being part of it, can conceivably be defined as supporting those concepts. They've said that all of those types of programs must be removed from the federal government. They've also called for an investigation of grantees and contractors that may promote those ideas or may have that as part of their mission or part of the contracts and grants that they've received from the federal government. And they've also issued a statement that private sector entities should not embrace those concepts as well, right? And that they would look into some of the top, I think they named 9. They've asked for an investigation of some of the top nonprofits, foundations, corporations, and other entities that advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they've done this in a very clever way because in this moment, they haven't attacked a particular corporation. They've just said, don't do it. And they said, we're going to investigate you. That is all to create a chilling effect. That is all for people to obey in advance. That's all for the purpose of getting entities to capitulate and pull back on these important efforts, but without them even having to lift a finger, right? Just the words alone are meant to shake people and have them pull back. We've seen a number of corporations, not enough, but we've seen a few corporations stand up, like Costco, like Apple, like Estee Lauder. Now, I will say that all three of those that I just named stepped up before this executive order came out. So we are standing watch to make sure that they hold firm, and we need to do our part. And I hope we'll get into some solutions soon about how do we continue to lift up the entities that are doing the right thing. We know a vast number have also backtracked and have been very clear about that. And that's been very concerning because we see a lot of copycats. We see a lot of people just moving away from the commitments that they made post George Floyd. What I will say about this, and there's one other major issue that I know that we all care very deeply about, and that is the fact that many of the workers within the federal government were put on administrative leave or have been reassigned to other posts and are being threatened. And some of them, I'm hearing that some people have actually been fired, and we're trying to actually get a handle on what's happening to people in the federal government who have been associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility programs. So that's what that executive order has done already. And again, we are less than a week in to the Trump 2 administration. There are already lawsuits that are being formulated to push back on this. It was important for us to actually see what the scope was. And as I said, it was different from the one that we sued on before. So we had to make sure that we are interpreting the language right, that we're coming up with the right legal claims to pierce this and point out its weaknesses. But that isn't the only executive order of concern. We know that there was also one involving immigration, and that is deeply concerning to many of our communities who are so diverse, and the Black diaspora that comes from, all parts of this globe. And then there was also a direct strike on birthright citizenship, which is an attack on the 14th Amendment, which in my mind is, along with the 13th and 15th, those are Reconstruction amendments. So those are the bedrock of our constitutional democracy. And the strike against birthright citizenship, we should all know, I mean, birthright citizenship only came to be because of Black people and us asserting our citizenship post-enslavement and ensuring that anyone born on this soil is considered and deemed to be a full American citizen. Right now, it's being wrapped up in the whole anti-immigrant rhetoric. It's being wrapped up in all the fear mongering about people coming into this country and suggesting that these, people who migrate here are criminals or are not worthy of being citizens. And that is wrong in and of itself. And we know that. And we should talk about how we attack that false narrative. But let's also be clear, when you attack birthright citizenship, you're attacking Black citizenship, because that is the foundation of that principle. And when you attack any part of the 14th Amendment, you make that entire amendment weaker and subject to attack. So the Equal Protection Clause, which protects all of us from discrimination, Black people and every other group that has been historically discriminated against, gets cover from the Equal Protection Clause. And so while the attack on that has not been as direct as the Birthright Citizenship Clause attack, trust and believe that when they come for the 14th Amendment in any way, shape, or form, that they're coming for it all. And so we need to be very vigilant about that. We at the Legal Defense Fund have joined forces with the ACLU and have already filed a complaint and a motion to enjoin that executive order. And there was another case that achieved that injunction as well. So right now that executive order is on hold. So you're going to hear a lot about, things being issued and then being put on hold because of the legal actions that are happening. And so there are many ways that I think we can support that type of work. And obviously there are a plethora of issues to consider. One last thing I'll say, and I know Maya has some insights to share as well, is that corporations who are running away from DEIA are also running headlong into legal violations potentially, right? If you just think about what these terms are, if you think about diversity, if you tell corporations that they cannot advance diversity, and yet they're seeing a very diverse applicant pool, and if there's no diversity on their staff or in their leadership or in whatever you're considering, that right there could be a prima facie evidence of a Title VII violation. If you have a diverse job pool and none of these folks are qualified and make it into your leadership or into your workforce, then that's a potential violation. So telling people that they should not consider diversity is a problem. Telling people that their work environments can't be inclusive is a problem because it can lead to a hostile work environment, which is, again, banned by Title VII, right? All workplaces should be inclusive. Everyone should feel like they belong in a workplace. If a workplace feels like they're excluding certain types of people, that's likely unlawful. So again, these folks are playing with fire here, and they're trying to like dance between these, the law, the mandates of our civil rights statutes, and then this rhetoric and this chilling that the Trump administration is trying to advance. Same thing with accessibility. You've got the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? Your workplace isn't accessible, you've got a problem. You are violating the law. And of course, equity is something that is perhaps a more complex idea, but it's all about fairness at the end of the day. That's what advancing equity is. It's not cheating anybody out of anything. It's not denying people something that is their right. It is making the pie available for everyone to get a bite. And that really is all that it boils down to. So I just want us all to make sure that we understand what protections still exist and that we are reminding people of these mandates of corporations, et cetera. We actually have a wonderful resource where we talk about the limits of the Supreme Court decision, which gave rise to all of this and emboldened people to spread it to the private sector. And hopefully we can drop that in the chat.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. I want to make sure you gave us a whole lot of information which we desperately needed, and I want to thank you for making sure that we are attuned to the facts. One thing that I want to emphasize that you talked about and is there is a difference between an executive order and a statute, and the executive order cannot wipe out statutory law. And so, and also, I note here, which you actually reminded us of, is that we saw something in these executive orders that we typically do not see in executive orders, and that is suggestive language. Normally, in an executive order, it is very specific to deal with an administrative guideline or an administrative issue, and it is pretty directive as to who and what it is seeking to administer that is within the bounds of its administrative authority. But in several of these executive orders, we saw suggestive language like the states should consider, which is not a directive to an administrative body, but really a forecasting, if you will. It's using the EO as an influence document as opposed to an administrative document. What should we do with those kinds of clauses, and how should we be treating them?
Are you directing that to me?
It's open, but I was directing it to you because I'm going to give Maya. Maya has a long runway because she's been convening others, and I wanted to hear about her work there. But I want to
Got it. Sure. Well, you're right. I mean, an executive order does not have the same force of law as a statute if there is a conflict, right? That then has to be sorted out, which is where all these lawsuits are headed. To the extent that anything in these executive orders conflicts with a statute or with the Constitution, then that needs to be sorted out. Also, much of what Trump has tried to do in the past and again now is to legislate from the White House desk. You can't do that, right? We have checks and balances for a reason. You have to go to Congress and get laws passed. He can't just issue an edict and have it be law unless it's involving, emergency powers or some extreme event where you need the president to intervene. Much of what he's doing right now does not involve anything of any urgency, if there are any that are premised on that. And so we're also going to see some claims that express that this is beyond really his executive power. But the language that you point out that's not binding, that is really to influence, is all part of his, very, very effective game of seeding these ideas in the minds of the public and the minds of power brokers to make people think that they're doing the wrong thing or that this is a bad thing without necessarily even, criminalizing it or banning it per se. He is full of rhetoric, full of hot air, full of, all sorts of damning statements that are based on mistruths and that have a clear agenda to divide. So
Yeah.
we have to be the ones to point out, A, you don't have to do that. No, you don't. That's not what it says. And in fact, what you do have to do is comply with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What you do have to do is comply with the National, Voter Registration Act and all the other things that we know are still in force and in play. And that's why I think it's important for us to know how far these legal decisions actually go and to point out to businesses, not only are you not required to follow the suggestions of this person and his administration, but you have legal obligations that force you to make sure that your workforce is protected and that you don't violate these statutes. And that's just a constant reminder. And then I'll say this, there's also just the business imperative, right?
Yeah.
There's so many studies that show that a diverse team, a diverse workforce is better for the bottom line. They're more productive, they're more innovative, they yield better profits. So there's even a fiduciary duty that businesses have to ensure that they have the best talent and that they are amassing the right people to execute their business strategy. So, these are reminders that we have to keep pressing and pushing. And then, I do hope that beyond the legal work that we're doing and the amazing work that Maya does in ensuring that we have coalitions that are focused on these issues, we as individual Black women have a lot of power, individually and collectively. That 91%, that 90+% that voted in beautiful formation, even though we didn't get the outcome that many of us were looking for, we need that same degree of cohesion. 90+% should be our mantra on everything. We need to cohere, we need to have a strategy, and we need to make sure that we're using our purchasing power and every other power we have in one direction, and that is the direction to move Black people forward and to push back against this administration.
Oh, thank you so much, Janae. I hope you can stick around because we do have a lot of questions, but I want to turn to our sister Maya. Maya, thank you so much for joining us. I should have done this in the beginning, but like many of the folks who are chiming in the chat, I was so focused to get to the DEI conversation. Please start by sharing a little bit about what Leadership Conference is doing. But my specific question to you is, you've been leading the Protecting DEI Coalition for some time now. A lot of folks are asking kind of the same question. What should we be doing? How should we be responding? What is the act of the non-lawyers, if you will? And so I will start with that question, but please start by sharing a little bit about the Leadership Conference so we're all aware.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say, you see why we're in good hands with Janae Nelson of the Legal Defense Fund. And I just am so grateful for it. The work is incredibly important. And the Legal Defense Fund is not only am I an alum, so I consider myself an outside, I know you don't get rid of us that easily. It's a family as much as anything else. And I'm really, really proud to be a part of the family. But also the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights is very fortunate to have the Legal Defense Fund as a member organization and Janae Nelson on our board. So just so you know, we are one community. Let me just say a few things about the Leadership Conference, and I want to dive into build on the critically important points Janae has already made. So first of all, we are the oldest and largest civil rights coalition in the nation. We have over 240 national organizations. We are founded out of the Black liberation struggle by the NAACP, by the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and with Union and Jewish allies. The laws that Janae has already referenced are laws that we collectively fought to get on the books. We are 75 years old this year. I say that because we enter this year with determination. And the determination is to not just say you can't turn back the clock, but to say we got to go farther. We never reached the promised land. We were still marching towards it. And so I just want to say we're looking at how this is a fight against what's wrong, but to build for what is right. Let me just say a couple of points I just want to add to Janae's points, because I agree with them and they're so powerfully important. And I don't say this, and I'm not sharing this to depress you or to suggest anything other than the power of our collective action. But it is disturbing because, to Janae's point, there's what's legal and then there's what's impactful. We're already seeing, we heard from someone who works for the Veterans Administration that does culturally competent care. We all know how many veterans of color we have, how many women veterans, how many veterans with disabilities. We know that it is a huge part of that population in the Veterans Administration. We also know how healthcare can discriminate by not taking into account not just people's culture, but we know there's implicit bias that ignores patients' pain or needs. These are programs that are about improving the lives and health outcomes that the agency itself is responsible for. And these executive orders are, and particularly one that's threatening to fire chief diversity officers, and that has reassigned some, is having an impact on how these agencies are be running. And we're hearing from federal workforce about how that's impacting them. I want to share another example, the Air Force. You may have seen this in the news today. The Air Force has a recruitment video that is also part of its DE&I program. I tweeted about it. You should look out for it. It's called Breaking Barriers. It foregrounds the Tuskegee Airmen and the first woman pilot in the Air Force. It's actually a really well done video, and it surprised me. But I say that because as a result of these executive orders, the Air Force pulled that video offline, took it out of its program to quote unquote review it. There is no question under the law that this is a lawful video. It's talking about its history in breaking the barriers that had existed that got in the way of people getting to participate, if you call it getting, but but in the military. And we know how central that is to national security. So this really is having a chilling effect, right? It really is having impact. And there are other lawsuits, just so you know, and we are also made up of labor unions. And, there's already a labor union lawsuit against removing federal employees with a stroke of a pen. But I want to come back to what work, and Janae said this, but this is the work the executive orders were intended to do. To your very point, Holly, even about making statements that have nothing to do with administrative action. And, Donald Trump, in one of the executive orders, literally calls this is the ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based meritocracy. This from the man who is nominating people who are deeply unqualified to run the agencies or serve in, including Hegseth. But I won't go down that rabbit hole, but just the incredible hypocrisy of it. But in it, he calls DE&I dangerous, demeaning, and amoral. So when you unpack that and you add it to the ways in which they're using the bully pulpit of the federal government, the threats, and even in the point about directing states, it's also directing states. States get federal money. Title VI is supposed to cover discrimination in receiving federal funds. This is an effort to try to chill what states are doing by this kind of speaking executive order. So what do we have to do and what can we do? Let me say this. We know diversity remains very popular in this country. So we have to think, what is this? And by the way, everybody benefits. I'll just give you one statistic. If you look at who chief diversity officers are in the Fortune 500, 75% of them are white. 75%. When you look at who's benefited from affirmative action, white women. So we know, white men who didn't meet the height requirements for police departments like New York City because they were too short, benefited when affirmative action for women actually said height requirements don't have anything to do with the job. White men got those jobs who previously did not. So we have to remember that they impact everyone, and we have to actually utilize that. So one is we have to message to what this is really for, what it really does, and who it's really about, which is everyone, which is about, it's always been about merit. It's actually been about the victims of fairness who don't want the competition, holding on to all the opportunities. And so we have to lean into it that way. And we're all working collectively on communication strategies to do that as a coalition, because there's lots of expertise throughout the coalition. But it's also not being silent. So let me just say, a lot of our allies are afraid to speak up. And sometimes that even includes people on the Hill who do care, but that doesn't mean they're using their outside voice. And by outside voice, I mean actually making noise, and not just from the usual suspects, but actually calling it out for what it is. And let me say one thing that this is. This is about an effort to shrink government, to use division to do it, and to do it to privatize what government currently does. Now, we know what private prisons look like. They look like human rights violations, even worse than state and federal prisons, and with significantly less oversight. We know what it looks like to privatize healthcare because it has undermined the health of too many people, including in Black communities. We know what it looks like to privatize schools, because that's what we had before we as a civil rights community fought for public education. It was essentially privatized. All of this is actually an effort to make rich people significantly richer, which is why the billionaires are looking at what to cut. And remember, in a lot of these DE&I orders, it actually goes directly, including on environmental justice, is saying we will defund the programs for environmental justice. We will defund the grant programs for environmental justice. It's not just going after the programs in the form of personnel. It's going after the programs in the form of supporting and delivering the outcomes that are supposed to be health. So we have to actually ground what this fight is and how it impacts our daily lives, like what kind of curriculum you get in your school, because they're going to do that in the Department of Education around curriculum and call it CRT and DEI. They already have been doing it. We all seen this playbook. But part of what this means, and we're working on this, we need to recognize just on this Zoom, there are 3,400 Black women.
Yes.
3,400. If even half of us sent a letter to Meta saying, you are making us endangered, or half of us sent a letter to our representatives and our senators saying, you are not demanding enough and speaking out enough. If we send these letters to our states saying, you must adopt legislation and require programs that protect us because the federal government isn't, we have every ability, as Janae said, to use our collective voice to push on the Hill, to push private companies. And let's be clear, they are capitulating. But also, let's be clear, 80% are saying they are not capitulating, but they won't talk about it. The very act of forcing, or I shouldn't say forcing, making private companies feel vulnerable so that they stay quiet is very much about getting away with what is unlawful or trying to stop others from advancing things the law permits. And that is making sure we have a fair workplace, we have decent health care, and that we're all getting served by the programs that government creates. Because the other thing that the Biden executive order does, and I really want to point attention to the Trump executive order, it revokes the executive order that President Biden, all of us worked on it, Janae's nodding because this was a coalitional effort to get President Biden to say every single agency should have a racial equity plan. Every single one. He wrote that executive order. Donald Trump has taken it away. So whether it's federal contractors, whether it's federal employees, whether it's federal programs, or whether it's just paying attention how to do the dang job better so every last one of us benefits, this is what Donald Trump has done. And the more we point out its actual real world impacts on people, on our people, and as Black women, because maternal health care, let me just say, he just did us dirty when we are dying at 3 to 4 times more than white women just to be mothers. Just to be mothers. It impacts that. So once we start talking about it that way, it is a game changer because what he's doing is suggesting it hurts when he's the one doing the harm and his administration. And by the way, when it's backed by people who are white national extremists, and we should call that out too, because Stephen Miller, who is behind this, who sent those letters to corporations even before the election, is a white supremacist. And I'll stop there.
Well, listen, this has already been a powerhouse, as you all can see in the chat. You're really helping to answer so many questions. And we have a few more that I want to kind of dig into. First, there's a lot of questions around the impact these executive orders will have on our equal employment opportunity. First, the office, the commission itself, but also the protections. As we know, for those larger workplaces with more than 100 people, we have always felt a level of protection because of the equal employment opportunity in legislation. Tell us what impact these orders might have on that. And I will open it up for both of you to answer.
Janae, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I mean, one of the things that I'm most concerned about is this attack on Black jobs in federal government, because that's exactly what this is. And we know that Black people have relied on the federal government for employment because we have been discriminated against historically and now, even in contemporary times, in the private sector. Not to say that it doesn't happen in the government as well, but we have had greater entry, greater leadership and upward mobility in the federal government. That has helped to create a Black middle class in this country that is now at risk. If you look at just the DMV area and you look at Prince George's County, that is the wealthiest county in terms of Black wealth in the entire country. And a lot of those people have amassed that wealth through government jobs. Black people make up 19% of the federal workforce, and that's compared to just 13% of the total labor force in the United States. And a significant number of the Black people in federal government are Black women. So this is a direct attack on us and our jobs and the wealth that we've been able to accumulate, the pensions that people are looking forward to be able to take care of their families, to try to build intergenerational wealth through home ownership and the other traditional ways of amassing wealth. And we know even with this, the wealth disparity in this country is acute, and this will only exacerbate it. So the fallout here is enormous. It really is, if this is actually going to be fully effectuated, which is why we must push back on it as much as possible. It is deeply alarming. And, it won't end here, right? Because as I said, he's not just focusing on the federal workforce, he's trying to get private employers to do the same. And they're doing it to some extent. So we need to tell our stories. We need to make sure that if you see discrimination happening in a workplace, and you have facts and information, that you get in touch with people who can, organizations like Legal Defense Fund and others, who have the experience of bringing lawsuits that can represent people in class actions and really try to shed a greater light on the ongoing discrimination happening in various industries, that I think will only get exacerbated because of how emboldened actors will become. And they just need to feel the pain, and we need to rely on our courts. I'll say one other thing that I hope will give us a little bit of encouragement. Certainly I take some encouragement from it. And that is, when we were fighting Trump in the first administration, we were fighting him as he was nominating and confirming horrific judges to the federal judiciary, judges who had no background in civil rights and criminal defense or any of the issues that impact us directly. And not only were they unqualified and didn't have adequate experience, many of them were directly and are directly hostile to civil rights and carry with them some of the ignominious beliefs that Trump is peddling. So one of the things that's helpful now, even with that judiciary, we saw that he lost the vast majority of the lawsuits that challenged his overreach, right? I think he only won about 22%, and even then it was partial wins, and a lot of what he tried to do was scaled back by the courts that were then more conservative than they are now, 235 judges later, after President Biden helped to diversify the federal courts. So I'm not saying that the courts are going to save us completely by any stretch of the imagination, but I am saying that it is an opportunity for us to test our courts, for us to test this federal judiciary and see if they are going to be the check and balance that they were in the past and that we need them to be now.
I want to jump in on this important point, which is, and we as a coalition with a fair courts agenda actually worked really hard to get almost 100 of those judges, not just after they were nominated, the civil rights judges on the bench. And it's actually over 240, critically important. And it's a both and, right? We also can't, and never have. I mean, the civil rights movement always relied on court action coordinated with grassroots action. And I just want to give a couple of really, really clear points about what the executive order says federal contractors must do. So now they no longer must do this, which is agree in the contract that they won't discriminate. In other words, agree in the contract that they will obey federal law. It says it takes it out of the contract, which basically says you don't have to tell us you're going to comply with federal law. It says it's the provision that said you had to post in the office that you were an equal opportunity employer. Now it says you don't have to do that anymore. It even guts the significant part of the ability of the office in the Department of Labor to monitor and hold accountable employers for doing those things. I say that because we should recognize that just because the executive order says that you're not supposed, that you don't, that you can't, you don't have to promise to do it, right? That's what it says. It's like you are no longer asked to comply with the law. You are no longer asked to make an effort to be an equal opportunity employer. It doesn't say it can't tell you to violate the law, to Janae's point. So what we have to do is really think about the ways in which we demand the oversight. Most states have the same laws on state books, number one. So enforcement can still happen at state level. And we have very favorable AGs in many of them. And in the ones where we don't, we still have the ability to try to do outside efforts like litigation, but also like pressure. Again, how many of us are concentrated in states where our states are hostile to civil rights, but where there's so many of us that businesses have to worry about us if we collectively say to them, you're messing over our community. And we won't have it. So there are many, many ways for us to do what we have done traditionally as a civil rights community. You can go to civilrights.org, which is the Leadership Conference website, which is ways to get information about how to be active. But also, we make sure to connect with all those over 240 member organizations, but also to keep in touch with how the strategies are forming nationally, and where and how we're going to need you to put pressure on our friends to not be silent. I cannot tell you how important that is and how much that's going to be helpful both to the litigation, but also to the things that have to happen outside of the litigation. And one other thing because we haven't said this, although I know Janae also is deeply engaged in really the diaspora of this fight, because they are using transgender people. They are using transgender people as a wedge. When you hear them go after people who are transgender, they start the attack on DE&I with transgender women. That's where they started. They start saying all kinds of horrible, untrue things. Transgender people are 1% of the US population. We really running that scare from 1% of the US population. Secondly, what they ignore is that when we allow them to say that the government can tell you who you are, that doesn't stop at one group. It doesn't stop at one group. They're going to come for the census too, how we get apportionment and how we get our federal dollars. And don't think that when they come for identity politics, they're not coming for the census and for how our states and communities get dollars and apportioned political seats. So just know, anytime you hear the attack on transgender people starting, it is the way that they're trying to tell you or our communities to let them come for civil rights. And we should not let them do that.
I thank you all both for this, and you've been extremely generous with your time. Before I let you go, I almost hate that I have to ask this question, but here we are. Do we have a sense of what else is coming? Do we have a sense of other things that we should, dare I say, brace ourselves for?
Look, they're coming for education. Let me just say it loud. They're coming for education. All of this is a setup. When you hear D&I, they're talking about our schools. When you hear D&I, they're already talking about gutting the ability of the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education's, this is in Project 2025. They've given us the roadmap, that it can't do its job to protect our kids from discrimination. Let me just give you one really practical example of what the Office of Civil Rights has done under the Biden administration that they will stop. There was a lawsuit, I think it was Fulton County, may have been at DeKalb County, but it was in Georgia, and book bans, right? Now, book bans are not a thing that OCR directly goes after, but their bullying of Asian children and of transgender children and LGBTQ children started after the book bans. By the way, about 40% of books banned have Black or brown people who are lead characters and who have written the books. And about the other 40% are LGBTQ books. It's very targeted. So the bullying started, the school did nothing about it. We've had students called the N-word. We have had students all kinds of, had lynches on their lockers and all kinds of things. The point is, it's OCR that goes in and says, we're going to investigate it and we're going to stop it. They did that and issued and got an agreement out of that school district that allowed the bullying of Asian kids. This is something that this administration wants to stop. It wants to take it away. It has been critically important. And really, in Project 2025, it wants to privatize education. It actually says there should be no Department of Education. Now, Trump can't do that with the stroke of a pen. That takes an act of Congress. But he can debilitate the Office of Civil Rights significantly. And we should understand education, just like employment, is at the top of the agenda. And also remember that when we're talking about immigration, as Janae said, we're talking about Black people too. Haitians, Africans, West Indians, we're talking about all our people. But they're also going to use it to go into our schools. They're going to use that to go in and try to figure out which students are what. And we're going to start to see some teachers and school districts getting in that hate game with them. We should be very concerned about that. We saw what happened in the election cycle with the stereotyping and then the threats that came to the Haitian community in Springfield, Ohio. We can't let that happen, but that has to be and is certainly in the civil rights community very high on our list.
No.
Yeah, if I can just add to what Maya said, I could not agree with her more. They want our public education infrastructure that is just unequivocal. This has been a project that is decades in the making. In the same way as Maya said, that they privatize prisons and now profit off of Black bodies. They want to do the same thing with our education system. And this will resegregate our schools, which we know are already segregated de facto, right? This will resegregate our schools in ways that we haven't seen in 70 years, right? We are just on the heels of commemorating the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And we stand at the precipice of all of that being undone and rolled back. If we think our schools are underfunded now, if we think that our children are not being properly educated now, when they start giving all parents vouchers to put their kids in their own private schools, potentially religious schools, the Supreme Court is taking up a case now to determine whether the separation between church and state really is a thing anymore, right? Especially in public education. We will see our society moving apart, kids being homeschooled and indoctrinated with this type of rhetoric that we're seeing fed to the masses now, and creating a new generation of people who are nourished on hate and ignorance. It will be debilitating. And so it is a scary picture, but we can push back against it. As Maya pointed out, he can't just dismantle the Department of Education. He can weaken it, though. And we need to tell this story. We need to talk about the fact that the entire public education system in this country exists because emancipated Black people created it to the benefit of everyone, especially white folks in this country. And we need to remind people of that history and remind them of what happens when you have an ill-informed electorate and the uses that we can expect to happen. The last thing I'll say is the other areas that we are most concerned about are attacks on the right to vote, right? You already saw that Trump tried to condition funding for California, people who have survived and are dealing with an incredible natural disaster, or maybe unnatural in terms of how it came to be. And he's trying to condition that on the imposition of a voter ID requirement in the state of California. They will try to come for voting rights because that is one of the most effective ways for us to get out of this, and that is to vote the people who are against us and against our multiracial democracy and our Constitution out of power. But if we don't have the right to vote, or if the barriers to the right to vote are so steep and high, then that makes it much more difficult for us to, through peaceful means, get a transition of power. The other deep concern is, especially with Pete Hegseth now heading the military, the crackdown on protests. They've already said that they would be willing to, deploy the military against protesters. Protest is our other vehicle of making it clear that we dissent, that we disagree, that we do not support, and we want this to change. And if we don't have that outlet and we don't have that ability to exercise our First Amendment freedoms without the threat of military action, that renders all of us silent. And those are the most threatening issues, in my view, is to starve us of education, to take away our right to vote, and to make us too fearful to protest, which means we've got to be really creative about how we do protest. And we have to really think hard about ways that we can come together and mobilize in mass action in ways that will not be, we won't be subjected to the weaponization of government against us. And so I hope that that's part of, some of the conversations that this incredible group of sisters can discuss, because that's what we need to be doing.
Can I just add, and
Please do, Maya.
everything Janae said, because it's at the top of all of our lists in the civil rights community, and for all the reasons Janae said. I just want to add one thing that is not an executive order that is coming, and we have to be ready for it. And it does go to education and a lot of the, and healthcare, housing, all these things, which is, and remember that he's put a billionaire in charge of this, Elon Musk, is we've talked about, you've been reading about Doge and like the look for cuts. But one of the things that the Trump administration wants to do is do something that Richard Nixon was told he couldn't, which was use the thing called the Impoundment Act to, and again, this is in Project 2025, so they've given us the playbook, to essentially unilaterally refuse to spend dollars appropriated by legislation, by Congress, in appropriations, and just refuse to do it, or to use the dollars differently. That is simply that's crazy land. But this is the administration that will not abide by the law, that will ignore the checks and balances. And I think we have to acknowledge and recognize that we have a Senate so far, a House divided, meaning the Republicans in the House are in different factions, and they can't afford to lose more than 2 votes. But on the Senate side, they've been capitulating. Hegseth is a great example of that. They know what he's an alcoholic sex abuser who's never run anything except into the ground, let alone the side of the U.S. military. This tells us all we need to know. And it's not the only one. We got to fight on DOJ, on all these things. But I'm just pointing this out because this isn't going to come in the form of an executive order. This is going to be action they take without permission. So when we think about these things like our schools, like our healthcare, like school lunch programs, I mean, as basic as nutrition programs, this is one of the ways they're going to use it. And this is where we've got to use our voice to really ensure that our electeds on the Hill are standing firm and using their bully pulpits. So be on the lookout. I just wanted to add that to everything Janae said, because she couldn't be more right. They're using the power of the purse to try to take away our democracy, take away our rights, undermine our public programs, privatize them, but they're also trying to use the power they were not given to starve what they don't like. So we got work to do.
Let's have all the possible hand claps, cheers, excitement for these 2 amazing Black women who have helped us get true, accurate information, have given us many things to do, have alerted us to all the things that we need to be concerned about. We're going to be bringing up our sister, Siobhan Arline Bradley. But before we do, I want to just hit some highlights. One, and this is probably one that we really need to deeply understand. So many of our organizations and groups that we are members of, that we trust, that we go to, are working together. You heard both Maya and Janae use the word coalition. So one of the best things that you all can do individually is to be a part of these groups and connect with them. You already know who they are. They are the the National Council of Negro Women. They are the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, the NAACP, the Urban League, Power Rising, Higher Heights, of course, Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, and so many other local and state groups that have always been there for you. They've gone absolutely nowhere, and now is the time when they need you and your energy to connect, and they will be able to provide you real-time information about what's going on in your community and what's going on issues that you care about. The second is, I want you to know there's not one executive order. There have been many executive orders, and we expect there will be many more coming. And so we're going to do our best to try to keep it all straight. There are a number of law firms as well as organizations that are now tracking these EOs, and we're going to share those resources with you so that you can have a space to go to understand some of the things, and some of the things are happening, but also recognize this stuff is happening in real time. which means some of the stuff we anticipated. But I will tell you, just from my own point of view, having been involved with diversity, equity, inclusion for almost 30 years, I'm dating myself. There's some surprises in this too that we didn't expect. So we're learning a lot as we go. And as we learn, we're going to give you the information and make sure you have what you need to respond accordingly. It was so empowering to understand the difference between the legal guidance of an executive order versus some of the influence statements. We have to discern what is legally viable versus what is influential, because we know if we respond to the influence, then people will begin to think that it is a fact and true just because of the way we are responding. So we need to be clear about the discernment here. And then a couple other quick points. We know that the EOs present some conflict between, and let me not use jargon, the executive orders by Trump have presented some conflicts between our statutory law. And the way that the law works is that if there is a conflict between the executive order and the statutory law is the default. But because some of these conflicts are not cut and dry, what do we know? We know there are going to be lawsuits, and there's going to be a lot of them. And you all may find lawsuits to be intimidating, and you're concerned about it because of the judges and you don't trust the courts. But as Janae said, this is a mechanism, not the mechanism. And the other mechanism is all of us, the 92 percenters out there. We still have power. In fact, we are powerful. And what can we use our power to do? We can use our power to speak. We can use our power to influence our elected officials. You know, them folks we just voted for. Whether you voted for them or not, they represent you, and they should be hearing from you regularly. And I saw so many people in the chat mention this. We can also leverage our dollars to support companies that support us. And we are working within these coalitions to make sure that we are providing you with enough information for you to make decisions about how you spend your money. And here's one of my favorite things we can do. We can run for office, sisters. Guess what's happening this year? School boards are up this year. City councils are up this year. Many county positions are up this year. And if you so be inclined, midterms are around the corner, so not too soon to be thinking about maybe you should be on your state legislature. Maybe you should even be running for Congress or something, or maybe even Senate, because those races too are around the corner. And finally, I want you to know that be prepared for a list of resources. Stay in tune and trust those outlets that have never let you down and have constantly been a source of accurate information. And just because I saw this in the chat, I want to say a shout out to Holly Weeks on identifying and helping us to identify some alternative social media outlets. Now, I'm gonna be honest here. I'm gonna stay on the outlets that we have and just add to mine because of the audience and because sometimes moving outlets can be a technology barrier. But if you are ready to go, we want to make sure you have the information to do so. So, fan base that has been mentioned is Black owned. We Kinfolk is another one, Black owned. Blue Sky is women owned. Let's see, Squiggable is Black owned, and I think I'm missing one other one. And we'll include this in the resources. I know I'm missing another one that is Black owned. But yes, there are alternatives. You don't have to stay where you don't feel like your voice is valued. All right, those are my summation points, but y'all know we are not going to end. I want to make sure you all also have a chance to hear from our team of advisors that always keep us on the straight and narrow. So please, Siobhan and Donna, Siobhan Arline Bradley, you all know, as the CEO and president of the National Council of Negro Women, and of course, political commentator and professor to us all, the esteemed Donna Brazile. Welcome to the stage, ladies. And you're going to need to unmute, Sister Donna.
Hey, Siobhan, are you greetings, everyone. It's so good to see everyone. And I want to first start by saying that I took a little time off over the last couple of weeks, first to celebrate my 65th birthday. Yes, I have my red, white, and blue uh, Medicare card. But secondly, to reconnect with my family, visit my beloved hometown of New Orleans, and to just regroup after 4 very amazing and awesome years. I want to say to all of you how grateful we are to all of the leadership and the work that you all have provided over the last couple of years. And yes, over the last couple of weeks following the election of 2024. I have just some brief commentary before I turn it over to my sister friend and my leader, Siobhan, with the National Council of Negro Women. First of all, I just want to say the future is unwritten. We have to reimagine the future in order to shape the conversation as well as debates and the struggles that we're all about to participate in. I am no stranger to the battles that we've seen over the last 50 years, as well as over my lifetime of being involved in both the political, academia, media, and much, much more. For those of you who are new to this conversation and this struggle, let me just reassure you that when it comes to resiliency and fighting, Black women will always lead the way. Black women will never stop fighting for the freedom and equality of all of our citizens. It doesn't matter. And I say this not in a light way because Janae and Maya really spelled it out. But it doesn't matter who we have in the White House. It doesn't matter who is occupying our state house. We have to understand that we have a purpose, we have a mission, and we're going to continue that assignment that we were given at birth. It came down from our ancestors who saw us through so much. And we're going to go through this experience with our heads up high, knowing and understanding that we were called for such a time as this. So my purpose of getting on this call tonight, and I'm on many calls, whether you see me or hear me, but I want you to know that we never give up. We didn't give up. We never gave up. This morning when I was out, and it's still cool and cold here in Washington, D.C., but I was walking Zora. Y'all know my beautiful dog. She's over there now because she tried to get on my lap and how I didn't give any more treats. But I went past the 19th Street Baptist Church, one of the first historical churches here in Washington, D.C. And I thought about the struggles of our ancestors just to have their own place of worship, just to have their own place that they could feel safe, not abandoned, not discouraged. And later this afternoon, as I took just a stroll down 16th Street, passing more and more churches and other institutions, I kept reading scripture. I kept seeing the words that gave me faith, that gave me hope. And I just wanted to pass it on to all of you that this is not the time for us to grow weary in doing good. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through it, whether it's an election, whether it's in academia, whether it's in the media, whether it's the culture, which shape politics. We're going to get through it because it's in our DNA and it's in our spirits. So right before the end of the year, I had to make a very big decision, something that impacted my life, something that impacted what I feel very strongly about. And that decision was to step down as chair of the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board, where over the last 3 years and prior to that under Barack Obama's leadership, I've been able to help expand programs, expand outreach, not just to say D&I, but I expanded it to community colleges. I expanded it to, non-Ivy League schools, state colleges like my own beloved LSU. Folks, we have made such a huge difference in this world. The fact that they want to chip back and take us back, that is not who we are. We're going forward. And I'll leave you with this. This morning when I was walking my beloved Zora May, my dog, you all know Zora. I thought about my great uncle Henry. Uncle Book. That's what we call him because he played by the books. And Holly, you know what it's like to have those old aunts, aunties, and uncles. And I started thinking about Uncle Book being part of that World War II brigade. And then my Uncle Johnny, a second generation Tuskegee Airman. And I said to myself, how dare, how dare, how they cannot erase my Uncle Book. They will never erase my Uncle Johnny. They will never erase my dad, Lionel Brazil, 4 Bronze Stars in Korea, UN Medal for Valor, 4 Bronze Stars. He gave up his scholarship at Grambling. He gave up his opportunity to be a basketball player. He gave up everything to serve his country, like my Uncle Book and like my Uncle Johnny, like my Uncle John in the U.S. Navy. They can't take this from us. They're not going to erase our past, nor will they erase or shape our future. Yesterday, as my friend recently told me, yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. Today is our gift. And the reason why I wanted to get on tonight is because you all have been a gift to me. You've been a gift to each other. You've been a gift to America over the last 4 years. And you're going to be the gift that keep on giving for America's future. We are the future. They won't take that from us. They're not going to take away my Uncle Henry, Uncle Book. They're not going to take away Uncle Johnny, Uncle John. They're not going to take away my father. They're not going to take away my mothers, my grandmothers. They're not going to take away my nieces and my nephews. They're not going to take that from us because it's in us. We're the gift that will continue to keep on giving. And I pray for all of you as you pray for my beloved New Orleans with my mayor just a couple of weeks ago. I pray that you keep standing, that you take your inner Harriet, in Tubman, your inner Sojourner, as in Truth, your Ought Be Well, you take your inner strength from all of those women who dared, who paved the way. They didn't have quicksand. They put down something that will help us build better, stronger. They can't take this from us. We're the future, reimagining, rebuild. And a week from now, we're going to have a new chair of the Democratic Party, a new vice chair, and a whole bunch of other people. But it doesn't matter who sits in those chairs because we built the throne for our own future. So thank you all, and thank you for always allowing me to be part of this. And I want to say, Holly and Maya and Janae and Siobhan and all the sisters and all Joteka, I love you all. Mignon, Leah, Tina, Yolanda, my sisters, my color girls, my friends. Tonight I want to just give one more shout out. I got to give a shout out to the Black AGs, Attorney Generals. To you, New Yorkers, thank you for Tish James. To you in Illinois, thank you for Kwame. To you in Maryland, thank you for Anthony. To you in Massachusetts, thank you for Andrea. To you in Nevada, thank you for Aaron Ford. To you in Minnesota, thank you for Keith Ellison. And yes, to you in Washington State, helping to protect my birthright, your birthright, our birthright citizenship. Thank you for electing Nick Brown. God, look what we've already done. We already got the posse. We got the power. Don't forget that. We have the power, and we're still rising. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. I'm just going to go right to Siobhan. Come on through, sis.
You know, when God is moving, the enemy tries to stop you. And literally, I got kicked out this call, and I got on just in time to get on my phone with 5% left on my phone to be able to say this. Donna has given us context. Let me give you a carrot for the context. There's 3 C's I want to take home with you tonight. We got to have a consumer strategy, a constituent strategy, and then a commitment strategy. A consumer strategy, a constituent strategy, and then a commitment strategy. Let's start with consumer, because I want you to understand when you hear us talk about DEI and consumerism, there's two parts to this. And y'all know I am here as a daughter of Bethune in the work that we do, a daughter of Height in the work that we do, a daughter of Dr. Keith, those of us that have gone through this, Dr. Cole, those women that have already done this. The consumer strategy is predicated on Black women being 52% of close to $2 trillion in a consumer base. 52% of a nearly $2 trillion consumer base of Black people. I want to start there. The consumer strategy says we've got to, one, select the companies, but two, protect the Black women in the companies. No one's talking about it that way. So I want us to reframe. NCNW is switching. We are going to focus on protecting the Black women inside of the companies that we want to consume from. And those companies that are trying to remove us, we'll protect the Black women there. And let me tell you why we're doing that. As much as you see all these executive orders, as much as you see all the tactics that have been happening, the law is still intact. All of the scariness around the affirmative action ruling back in 2023 has gotten folks shook, but they don't have the full context. It is still against the law to discriminate. So what they have done is used initials to help you rethink your consumer strategy. So let me bring it back to you. We're nearly $2 trillion in spending, and Black women make up 52% of that spending, which means my money talks, which means the way I move talks. So my sisters, the consumer strategy is consume where they want us, but protect the Black women. I won't do it without both. So NCNW is focusing on not re-engaging in the rhetoric that's wrong. We're focusing on a consumer strategy that protects the Black women and takes you to the companies that want you. And let me just offer this. And I want to shout out all the civil rights leaders, because the brothers and sisters are aligned here. Let me just tell you something. It's something about pain that'll push you to get together quick. I'm telling you, God is doing this. Y'all know I go to Alfred Street. We're in a fasting moment. And I'm telling you, when you get beat up, sometimes you got to get beat up. Sometimes you got to go through this. And this is God's way of saying, all right, where are you now? Do you trust me? Do you trust that $2 trillion in spending? And you mean to tell me they're not going to listen to us? So we have the power. So the consumer strategy is protect Black women, activate on companies that activate with us. And listen, y'all saw a lot of things that have been going on. The National Action Network was out doing it at Costco. Shout out to Costco. Let me add JP Morgan Chase. Let me add them who did not say no. They said yes. They said yes. So I'm trying to figure out now how to get them some money, some of my money. Hear me, sisters. Where you put your money is the power, all right? So that's the consumer strategy. It is a legitimate strategy. And I don't want us to miss this. Once we deal with the consumer strategy, which is the short term, there's another part of the short term that's the constituent strategy. In the money, walking and talking, you still have to be able to activate on this side of the work. The constituent strategy for NCNW is going to focus on a few areas. One, confirmations. Now, you may think it's a slam dunk. Let me tell you something. The HHS potential candidate for Secretary of Health and Human Services is a vulnerable son of a gun. Now, let me tell you something. We off the record. I'm nonpartisan, but I'm factual right now. The HHS secretary is attempting a coup against preventive medicine, hear me, and will be in cahoots with Dr. Oz if he's confirmed as the administrator of CMS, which right now in the Biden administration was led by a Black woman that this network pushed. Hear me. Our constituents on the conservative end of the spectrum don't like Obamacare, but they like the Affordable Care Act. And let me tell you how God moves. Sometimes you got to let the fool be the fool so you can do what you got to do. What they don't want is to lose their entitlements. They don't want Medicare to go anywhere. They don't want to miss out the opportunity to connect to their preventive medicine that they are owed because they worked for it. And listen, that's as American as apple pie. You have a vulnerable confirmation on the HHS side. What does that mean for you in action step? Well, that means your U.S. senators, I don't care if you're in a purple, red, blue state, green, black, I don't care what color the state is. Call your senator and tell your senators who you don't want confirmed. Do you hear me, my sisters? I want to be very specific. We got consumer, we got constituency. And in the phone call, you are saying you're looking for someone who activates preventative health care and ensures that Medicare, and listen, Medicaid stays intact. And Medicaid doesn't mean poor. Medicaid means person who is vulnerable. And it died on me. That's all right.
And just know we are planning to have a lot more of Siobhan Arline Bradley. So we're going to get really deep entrenched in this strategy and in all the things. And I think one of the most powerful things she says, so we have no confusion, the Black community is aligned. There is no division or error between us and Black men on this. We are aligned. And so we need to be showing up in all these spaces. You know, one of the reasons, and I want to get some clarity on this too, because I think it's been a little bit of confusion. You know, Win with Black Women wasn't started because we were trying to build a whole new organization. We were started because we wanted a space for us to be able to empower ourselves and share information and to support the institution building of those things that already anchored our community. And so we have leaders like Siobhan Arline Bradley who are using her institution, and we're going to be supportive and follow the mantra that she has set out and the strategy that she is sharing with us. And I expect every single one of you, if you haven't already, to follow NCNW on all social media platforms. And so when we are talking about this, no, there is no daylight between us. Whether you see Siobhan out front or Donna out front or Leah out front or Melanie out front or Latasha or anyone or Maya or Janae or even some of our brothers, be it Derek or Mark or Reverend Al, there's no daylight. We are all speaking to our folks to protect our folks. That is why we are here. I want to do one thing and see if we can get Siobhan back and see if we can get her back and see if she can get a little charge. And that is, Holly, could you show the Stacy Abrams video? Our sister Mignon Moore shared this with me earlier today. Then this just really breaks it down simple. We are looking to have Stacy on one of our future calls. And then we'll see if we can get Siobhan and go to announcements. Holly, could you show the Stacy video, please?
Funding public education for poor children. That was a DEI law because it was insufficient to say that you had education if we did not include those who were poor and had equity in terms of distribution. And so I would say that if you are, a U.S. Senator from the Appalachian region who was able to graduate from public schools, you are a product of DEI.
Yes.
Because it was DEI that made it possible for you to get that education that you could have gotten if you lived in a wealthier part of the country. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a DEI law. It took until 1990. So when we hear about attacks on DEI, they try to frame our attention around race alone. But if you are a veteran of any foreign war who lives in this country, you have benefited from DEI. You've also been, unfortunately, sometimes distanced from it because you didn't get access to the GI Bill.
Right.
But all of our interest should be in the foundational values of diversity. That means all people. Equity. That means having fair shot at opportunity. And inclusion means having access to the American dream however you want to create it. The attacks on DEI are not because DEI doesn't work. It's because it worked too well. It's because the voting.
All right. Thank you, Holly. We'll share that around And also, we're going to share around a link. Sister Angela Rye was going to join us and got caught up. Her, if you don't follow Native Land Podcast on Instagram, she has an excellent explainer on the the executive orders that Trump put out around the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, and we'll share that link as well. Chantel, why don't you come on up and give us our announcements, and then we'll go to our spiritual close, and then we will start after hours to continue this conversation. Chantel? And then go ahead and we're going to have Dr. Helen give us our spiritual close. Go ahead, Chantel.
Hey, Holly, how are you on this good Sunday? Um, Hold on one second here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we've got a few announcements that I want to go through. All right. So here are our announcements for this week. Sorry, y'all, I got to move the chat out of my window. All right, we've got a Sister Girl movie. One of our network members has a new movie that is out. So, a lot of people aren't watching the news. You want to find something to watch. So we've got One of Them Days. It was released last week. So if you have an opportunity to check out this movie, please do. Just a reminder that the summer internship for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, that deadline is March 28th, 2025. So if you've got anybody that's interested in a congressional internship program or a pathway to C-suite, make sure that you get those applications in by March the 28th. Do you want to volunteer with the Win with Black Women Network in your state? Or maybe you need to get one in your state. So join the all-state meeting. It's coming up on February the 3rd. It's 7 p.m. Go down to WWBW State Organizing, and that's the bit.ly link that we have. Lastly, not lastly, because I got one more thing. Our next Win with Black Women meetings, mark your calendar, save the date, February 9th, February the 23rd. It's always going to be the same link. We're just going to update it to include the new meetings, but mark these on your calendar so you'll know when we are meeting next. Look, t-shirts, but I got an announcement. You remember that One Voice, One Fight store? Y'all, we have retired it. It's retired. But we still got some shirts. We're going to bring back our new iteration of our website, but we kind of got something in the gap for you. So you can visit our state shirt links. You can just get a regular Win with Black Women shirt, or you can get a Win with Black Women shirt with your state name on it. We got long sleeve, short sleeve. So join us on that link. And Holly, that is all the announcements that I have.
And look at God, because our sister Siobhan is back. Come on, because
I see it.
They knew you wasn't done, sis. Come on, come on, come on.
I'll tell you, it's. I have to laugh. I called Q. I said, Q, my phone died and my laptop died at the same time, but my iPad had 100%, baby. So I went and got the iPad. Come on, Jesus. Come on, Jesus. Hey, sisters, I'm sorry. I was mid getting down. I lost my brain on that one. But look, all right, we were at 3 C's, right? Y'all got consumer. We know we're going to consume who wants to consume with us. We're going to also protect Black women inside of the companies we're going to consume. And for those that won't, we will protect those Black women as well. The next part of the strategy is understanding our constituency, HHS, the confirmations process. You can contact your senator to say what it is you value as a constituent as it relates to your health care. Why is that important? Because confirmations come from the votes of our U.S. senators. You, as a constituent, vote for your U.S. senator. We have 2 Black women who are in position. We have 3 Black men, 2 brothers, that are a part of the process and engage with us. And so we need to be sure that we are clearly defining how those confirmations can affect our decision to vote in the next election for those senators. Second part of constituency, here we go, is a seat strategy. House seats. Don't miss what Holly said. We today, I'm talking about NCNW, I'm talking about our partners in this work, are saying there are some vulnerable House seats. There's some vulnerable House seats. Don't think the House is not an opportunity for us. So what we're going to be looking at are some of the gubernatorial races in 2025, some of the House seats that'll come up in 2026. We got to be ready for those. And we need to hone in on specific districts. As we are meeting with the CBC, we're going to be identifying some of those vulnerable places. Now, look, again, we are nonpartisan, but we are factual on this side. And in our factual way, we need to make sure that we are on target for this. Then, when we finish our constituency work, I don't want you to miss this. I want to shout out April 2nd through 4th. NCNW is coming to DC. We're going on the Hill. We're going to be engaging on the Hill, but we're also going to be doing Purple Days in the districts again. You all were so supportive of that. We had about 4,000 people across the country collaborate on this with us. We're going to be hitting those districts. Please, please, please follow up with us on how you can engage on the ground. Now we're on commitment strategy. Here we go. Commitment strategy. You heard consumer. You heard constituency. The commitment strategy. One is resource Black organizations. Let me just say what I mean by that. When you resource Black organizations, you help resource the movement. Why? Because Black organizations, in many of our funding streams, we have to engage with some corporate folks, nonprofit folks, foundation folks. Well, the more that the letters of DEI get drained, the scarier people are to give money to Black organizations. Listen, we'll be 90 years old in December of 2025 at NCNW. My prayer is one day we will be able to resource ourselves with just Black women. I know I sound crazy. I know I sound nuts. I know it sounds just nutty, but I'm telling you, in my heart of hearts, there's no way I have all of the Divine Nine sororities. There's no way that I have all the faith sisters, all the business sororities, the links, the Jack and Jill moms. Why not? Why can we not be who we need to be together? I'm just telling you, there's going to be a way to do this. But we need you to resource Black orgs. If you're in a sorority, if they have a C4 or a C7 or a C3, if you're in the Black church, if you are a part of a Black business sorority or a civic organization, please, Women Black Women, all the ones that come on here, Power Rising, Sister Lee, Sister Vote, if you are a part of these institutions, do not find it robbery to spend your money where your support is. So the commitment strategy, resource Black organizations, resource Black business. Now listen, you can say what you want, but we need Black businesses to prosper because Black businesses are more likely to hire Black people. Now, we have to have the truth. We got to talk about the truth on this platform, right? So we have to engage in Black business resourcing. So resource Black organizations, resource Black business. And here we go. Resource Black sustainability. What does that mean? That means resource yourself. That means in these moments, we're going to have to start re-upping our bodies, our wellness. NCNW is committing with direct service and direct action. We believe that if you take care of yourself, your family will be well. If your family is well, your community is well. If your community is well, then the systems can change because you've taken direct service to the people and direct action against the systems. Resource Black sustainability. We want to sustain our wellness, sustain our families, sustain our homes, sustain our schools, sustain our communities. And when it's all said and done, the 3 C's will see us to liberation. I believe it. I stand by it. we are unified in a way we have not. And listen, some of you may be naysayers. Some folks like, you know what? I don't do organizations. I don't do institutions. I can't, no. We need Black sustainability in government. Black women run for office everywhere. Run for the commission, the dog catcher, the trash finder, the school board, wherever there's an office, it's time to mount up. Holly, thank you for giving me this moment. I'm sorry my phone went off, but I'm telling you something. I am so moved by God right now. I'm so moved by y'all right now because it is hard being us. It's hard being who we are, and it's been hard this week. But I'm telling you this. Not only is there no weapon formed against us, but you cannot get weary when you do well. The intention of the enemy is to disconnect you from doing good work. So when you hear about Elon Musk, when you hear about all these people, just start thinking about the good. There's some good stuff that comes out of us. When we show up, it's good because we're Black women. Black women make it good. They make things good. We make things good. And begin to think about how blessed you've been. When it's been awful, when you've had layoffs, when you lost somebody, when you lost that thing, you lost the relationship, you lost the job, when you got that notice about being a DEI person, but just still thinking about the good. God set me up. God put me in position. God make me trust you. And the more we're on our knees, the more he will know that we need him. So I just want to say that I love you, Holly. I appreciate you for the opportunity. I'm sorry that my tech was not good tonight, but I'm hoping that the 3 C's will see us to liberation. God bless you. I love y'all.
The 3 C's will see us to liberation. And I want to say this ain't a one-stop shop and we done. I hope that you will come back regularly and continue to update us on the ways that the 3 C's can work. And I can say, as an organizational leader myself, I'm going to jump right on the 3 C's chain with Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, and you can expect the full weight and strength of what we do to support what you do and what you are laying down. When I said there will be no daylight, we are our own leaders. We are the leaders the world is waiting for. It is us. And so I will be standing toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with you, my sister, and adopting your C program and letting folks know that we will be following NCNW in the way because you have laid it out for us. And there's no reason for us to go find another path. That is it. All right. I see you, Dr. Grant, and welcome. Before we go to you, let's go ahead and close out. And then let's get into our conversation for after hours and we will get it started and popping. Let's bring Dr. Helen up to close us out and then we will go ahead and move into after hours. Go ahead and stay on. But Dr. Helen, close us out. Give us a word.
All right. Good evening. Good afternoon. In the name of all that is, in a time like no other, full of possibilities for chaos and transformation that the world has never experienced before, even in the horrific 1930s and 1830s. Thank you for the privilege of being alive in a time that permits these most extraordinary possibilities. Thank you for your trust in our ability to change those things that must be changed while holding fast to our commitment to the common good and the universal laws of consciousness, one of which is simple. Anything is possible, including universal collaboration and connection, as well as the promotion of fear and division. What goes around comes around, and we will lead the process of coming around to new ways of being in the country and the world. We are around to build a future that reflects our values and our love. Give us the strength to engage in battle and the determination to engage in peace. Provide us with the patience to hear and understand the suffering of those both like us and not like us. We know that being unseen and unheard creates division and the horrors we currently endure. We will not do to others what has been done to us. Thus, we change the world and create the true meaning of presence leadership. Give us the backbone to speak up and speak out when our lives and security are on the line. Teach us discernment to know when, where, how, and whether it is the right time to speak, act, or retreat. Help us shape the world in which we wish to live, willing to occupy any position in it because of our abiding love for all humanity and all life, always remembering that all means all. Help us explore new ways of being together that have not been tried before, knowing that some efforts will be unsuccessful while we learn to get it right. Thank you for the privilege of being part of this community of Black women who are kinfolk as well as skinfolk. We find refuge in each other's presence, skills, mutual support, and willingness to serve. We hold each other accountable, and we hold each other close, offering broad shoulders, big hearts, strong minds, and bottomless compassion. We are one in universal, unconditional mastery and love. Hold Sister Joteka and the entire Win with Black Women team in the palm of your and our collective hands as we rest, grieve, refresh, and heal. And so it is.
And so it is. And sisters, with that,